Hi, everyone. Or hi, no one. But I know that I will have quite a few of you having watched this afterwards. So, again, such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. And we're so lucky in New Zealand that we can actually go outside. I was talking to my niece who lives in Italy. And today, after a good month, so that's a long time. That's twice as much as that you guys have been in. Today was the very first time that she was actually allowed to go outside just to get a fresh breath of fresh air. So we're so lucky here in New Zealand that we are able to enjoy the sunshine and go for a walk with a little bubble. So I hope that you've done that today and enjoyed some nice sunshine. We're going to be continuing reading chapter 9, and it was exciting yesterday because Carl not only found a grandfather in a little white house. He was really worried he was going to end up in Cutler's Cavern. But it turns out that this man was actually hiding his brother because he found Jonathan lying asleep in a secret little room behind the sideboard in this man's house. What was his name? Matthias? Let's continue reading. I can remember a few times when I have been so happy that I have hardly known what to do with myself. Once, when I was small, and for Christmas, Jonathan gave me a toboggan for which he had been saving up for a long time. And then the time when I first came to Nangiala and found Jonathan down by the stream, and the whole of that amazing evening at Knight's Farm when I was so happy I could barely contain myself. But nothing was like finding Jonathan on that floor at Matthias's place. Think that one can be so happy. It was as if I were laughing aloud in my very soul. I didn't touch Jonathan. I didn't wake him up. I didn't cry out with joy or go wild. I just lay down beside him quite quietly and I fell asleep. How long did I sleep? I don't know. All day, I think. When I woke up, Jonathan was sitting on the floor beside me. He was just sitting there smiling. Nobody looks as kind as Jonathan when he smiles. I had thought that perhaps he wouldn't be at all pleased that I had come too. I was that he had perhaps forgotten it called for help. But now I could see that he was just as pleased as I was. So I had to smile, I too. And we sat there just looking at each other, saying nothing for a while. You called for help, I said at last. And then Jonathan stopped smiling. Why did you call? I asked. It was clearly something he could not think about without being upset. His reply came so quietly that it was as if he could hardly bear to answer me. I saw Cutler, he said. I saw what Cutler did. I didn't want to torment him with my questions about Cutler. Anyhow, I had so much to tell him. First and foremost about Jossie. Jonathan didn't really want to believe it. His face turned white, then red, and then he almost cried. Jossie, no, not Jossie, he said, tears coming out of his eyes. But then he rushed up. Sophia must be told at once. How can we do that? I said. Well, one of her pigeons is here. Bianca. She can fly back this evening. Yes, Sophia's pigeon. I thought so. I told them that it was because of that pigeon that I was there with him and not in Cutler's Cavern. It was a miracle, I said, that amongst all the houses, then I would have ridden past. Bianca, thank you for sitting there, said Jonathan. But he had no time to listen to me anymore. Haste was important now. He scratched on the shutter with his fingernails, rather like a little mouse scratching, and it wasn't long before the shutter opened and Matthias peered in. And little Rusky? He just goes on sleeping, Matthias began. There are in this world. And then he vanished to fetch Bianca, closing the shutter on us. It was a good hiding place Jonathan had with Matthias. A tiny secret chamber with neither window nor door, the only way in through the shutter behind the sideboard. There was no furniture, or is here now. That was why Bianca came flying in yesterday evening, said Jonathan, to tell us that you had disappeared and had gone to find me. I did it so that Sophia wouldn't be worried, I said. Jonathan laughed. Not be worried, that's what you think. And me? How calm do you think I was when I learned that you were somewhere up in the mountains of Nangiala? I must have looked ashamed, because he hastened to comfort me. Brave little Rusky, he said. It's wonderful that you were there all the same, and even more wonderful that you are here. That was the first time anyone had ever called me brave, and I thought that if I went on this way, then perhaps I would be able to call myself Lionheart after all, despite what Jossie said. But then I remembered what else I had written on that wall, about someone with a red beard who wanted white horses. I asked Jonathan to add a line to the message. Carl says all that about Redbeard is wrong. I also told him how Hubert had saved me from the wolves, and Jonathan had to release Bianca. And lights began to go on in all the houses and farms on the slope below us. It looked so calm and peaceful that you might have thought that people were now sitting down there eating their good evening meal, or perhaps just talking to each other and playing with their children, or singing little songs to them and enjoying life. But you knew it wasn't like that. You knew that they had hardly anything to eat, and that they weren't calm and happy, only unhappy. Tanglemen up on the wall with their swords and spears helped you to remember how things were in case you might forget. There were no lights in Matthias's windows. His house was dark, and everything was silent, as if there wasn't a living soul in it. But we were there, not in the house, but outside. Matthias standing on guard at the corner of the house, and Jonathan and I crawling amongst the wild roses with Bianca. There were thickets like that all around. Never again be able to smell the scent of wild roses without my heart thumping and remembering how we crept amongst the bushes. Jonathan and I were so close to the wall where Tanglemen were listening and watching, perhaps most of all for someone with the name of Lionheart. Jonathan had blackened his face and pulled a hood right down over his eyes. He didn't look like Jonathan, I must say, but it was dangerous all the same, and he was risking his life every time he left his. All he said then was, yes, they can carry on doing that, I think. He had to release Bianca himself, he said, because he wanted to be certain that no one saw her as she flew away. The guards on the wall seemed to have a piece of it each to guard, standing at the corner of the house with his horn lamp, and he arranged with us how he would signal. This is what he said. When I hold the lamp down there where the wall curves away and he usually talks to other Tanglemen, that's when you must let Bianca go. And that's what we did. Fly, fly, said Jonathan, fly, my Bianca, over the mountains of Nangiala to Cherry Valley, and watch out for Jossie's arrows. I don't know whether Sophia's pigeon really understood human speech, but I think perhaps Bianca did, because she laid her beak against Jonathan's cheek as if wishing to calm him, and then she flew away. But he didn't. He was probably standing there talking, neither seeing nor hearing anything, and Matthias was keeping watch, and he lowered the lamp. We saw Bianca disappear, and I pulled at Jonathan as I wanted him to go quickly back to the hiding place, but Jonathan didn't want to. No one could understand that better than I, who had lain for so long shut in the kitchen at home in town. Jonathan was sitting in the grass with his arms around his knees, looking down towards the valley quite calmly. One might have a wall behind him. Why are you sitting there? I said. Because I like it, said Jonathan. Because I like this valley at dusk, and the cool air on my face, I like that too, and wild pink roses that smell of summer. So do I said. And I like flowers and grass and trees and fields and forests and beautiful small lakes, said Jonathan. And when the sun rises and when the sun sets and when the moon is out, I like those things too. Everyone likes them, said Jonathan. And if that's all people ask for, can you tell me why they can't have peace and quiet without a tangle coming along and destroying everything? I couldn't answer that. And then Jonathan said, come on, we'd better go in. But we couldn't just run straight back in, because first we had to know how things were back with Matthias and where we had Fatty Doddick. It had grown dark. You couldn't see Matthias any longer, only the light from the lamp. "He's holding it up high. No Doddick here," said Jonathan. "Come on." But just as we began to run, the light from the lamp sank like lightning, and we had to stop immediately. We could hear horses approaching at a gallop, and then how they slowed down and someone spoke to Matthias. Jonathan gave me a little nudge in the back. "Go on," he whispered. "Go over to Matthias." "Oh, you're not late, Ava. Hi." "You can catch up later, huh?" "We love you. I love you too. See you." "Go on," he whispered. "Go over to Matthias." And then he threw himself straight into a wild rose thicket. Trembling and afraid, I walked towards the lamplight. "I just wanted a bit of air," I heard Matthias saying. "It's such a lovely weather this evening." "Lovely weather," replied a rough voice. "There's a death penalty for being out after sunset. Didn't you know that?" "A disobedient old grandfather, that's what you are," said another voice. "Where's the boy anyway?" "He's just coming," said Matthias, as I was now quite near him, and I recognized those two horses. Indeed, I did. "Catch it." "I'm just called Rusky," I said. I dared say that because no one knew that name, neither Jossie nor anyone else, only Jonathan and I, and now Matthias. "Rusky indeed," said Kader. "Now listen, Rusky, why do you think we've come here?" I felt as if my legs would give away beneath me. To put me in Katla's cabin, I thought. They must have regretted letting me go, of course, and now they had come to fetch me. What else? "Well, you see," said Kader, we ride around this valley in the evenings to see that people are obeying what Tangle has decided, but your grandfather finds it hard to grasp. Perhaps you could explain to him how bad it would be for both of you if you don't stay indoors after dark. And don't forget," said Vader, "you won't escape a second time. If we find you where you shouldn't be, remember that, Rusty. If you're young, you want to grow up and become a Tangleman, don't you?" A Tangleman? No, I'd rather die, I thought, but I didn't say that. I was terribly anxious about Jonathan, and I dared not to annoy them, so I answered very sweetly, "Yes, yes, I do." "Good," said Vader. "Then you can go down to the big landing stage early tomorrow morning, and you'll be able to see Tangle, the liberator of Wild Rose Valley. Tomorrow he is crossing the river of the ancient rivers in his golden sloop, and he will be disembarking at the big landing stage." Then they prepared to leave, but Kader reined in his horse at the last moment. "Listen, old man," he shouted at Matthias, who was already halfway to the house. "You haven't seen a handsome, fair-haired youth called Lionheart anywhere, have you?" I was holding Matthias's hand, and I felt how he trembled, but he answered calmly, "I know no Lionheart." "Oh, don't you?" said Kader. "But if you happen to meet him, then you know what happens to anyone who gives him shelter or hides him? The death penalty. You know, right?" And then Matthias closed the door behind us. "Death penalties here, death penalties there," he said. "That's all those people think about." The sound of horses' hoofs had hardly died away when Matthias was out with the lamp again. Jonathan soon appeared, his hands and face badly scratched by thorns, but glad that nothing worse had happened and that Bianca was now in full flight over the mountains. Later on, we had our evening meal in the kitchen at Matthias, with the shutter open so that Jonathan could quickly disappear into his hiding place if anyone came. But first, we went out to the stable, Jonathan and I, and fed our horses. It was wonderful to see them again, standing there with their heads close together. I suppose they were telling each other all about everything that had happened. I gave both of them some oats. At first, Jonathan tried to stop me, but then he said, "Yes, let's let them have some for once. But oats, you don't give oats to horses any longer here in Wild Rose Valley." When we went into the kitchen, Matthias had put a bowl of soup on the table. "We haven't got anything else, and it's mostly water," he said, "but at least it's hot." I looked round for my haversack, remembering what was in it, and when I pulled out all my loaves and my smoked meat, the other two just gasped, both Jonathan and Matthias, and their eyes began to shine. It was a marvelous feeling to have what almost was a feast to offer them. I cut thick slices of meat, and we ate soup and bread and smoked meat. We ate and ate and ate, and no one said anything, not for a long while. Then at last, Jonathan said, "Oh, to have had enough to eat! I had almost forgotten what it was like to be full." I became more and more pleased that I had come to Wild Rose Valley. It felt more and more right and good, and then I had to tell them properly about everything that had happened to me from the moment I had ridden away from home until Vader and Kader had helped me into Wild Rose Valley. I had already told them most of it, but Jonathan wanted to hear it several times, especially about Vader and Kader. He had to laugh about that, just as I thought he would. And Jonathan and Matthias did too. "They're not at all that bright, those Tangle men, eh?" said Matthias, "although they think they are." "No, even I could trick them," I said. "Just think, if they had known that the little brother they wanted to get hold of so much was the very one they helped into Wild Rose Valley and just let go like that." And when I had said it, I began to think. I hadn't thought about it before, but now I asked, "How ever did you get into Wild Rose Valley, Jonathan?" Jonathan laughed. "I leaped my way in." "What do you mean, leaped? Surely not with Grim?" "Yes," said Jonathan. "I haven't got another horse." I had seen and knew what great leaps Jonathan could do on Grim. It's a very long chapter, this one. I had seen and knew what great leaps Jonathan could do on Grim, but to leap over the wall round Wild Rose Valley, that was more than any human being could believe. "You see, the wall wasn't quite finished then," said Jonathan. "Not everywhere, not to its full height, though it was high enough, you can be sure of that." "Yes, but the guards," I said. "Did no one see you?" Jonathan took a bite of bread and then laughed again. "Yes, I had a whole swarm of them after me, and Grim got an arrow in his rump, but I got away, and a kind peasant hid both Grim and me in his barn. And that night he brought me here to Matthias, and now you know everything." "No, you don't know anything at all," said Matthias. "You don't know that the people here in the valley sing songs about that ride and about Jonathan. His coming here is the only good thing that has happened in Wild Rose Valley since Tangle invaded us and made us all his slaves. 'Jonathan, our savior,' they sing, because he's going to liberate Wild Rose Valley. Believe you? I believe that too, and now you know everything." "You don't know anything at all," said Jonathan. "You don't know that Matthias is the one who is leading the secret struggle in Wild Rose Valley now that Orva is in Katla's cavern. They should call Matthias the savior, not me." "No, I'm too old," said Matthias. "He's so right, that Vader. It's all the same whether I live or die." "You mustn't say that," I said, "because you're my grandfather." "Well then, that's what I shall stay alive for, but I'm not fit to lead a struggle any longer. You have to be young for that." He sighed. "If only Orva were here, but he's in Katla Cavern until he's given to Katla." I saw that Jonathan's face had turned quite white. "We'll see," he mumbled. "We'll see whom Katla gets in the end." But then he said, "Now we must set to work. You don't know either, Rusky, that here in this cottage we sleep in the daytime and we work at night. Come on, I'll show you." He crawled ahead of me through the shutter into the hideout, and there he showed me something. He threw aside the feather mattress, which we had slept on, and took up two wide loose floorboards under it. There I saw a black hole going straight down into the earth. "This is where my underground passage starts," said Jonathan. "And where does it end?" I asked, though I could almost guess what his reply would be. "In the wild country on the other side of the wall," he said. "It'll come up there when it's finished. A couple more nights and then I think it'll be long enough." He crept into the hole. "But I must dig a bit further," he said, "for you must see that I don't want to pop up right in front of Fatty Doddick's nose. And then he vanished, and I sat there waiting for a long time, and when he came back at last, he was pushing a trough full of earth in front of him. He heaved it up to me, and I dragged it through the shutter to Matthias. "More earth for my field," said Matthias. "If only I had a few peas and beans to sow and plant there, that would be the end of our hunger." "Do you think so?" said Jonathan. "Tangle takes 9 out of every 10 beans in your field. Have you forgotten that?" "You're right," said Matthias. "So long as Tangle is alive, there will be hunger and need in Wild Rose Valley." Matthias was now going to sneak out and empty the trough on his field, and I was told to stay by the door and keep watch. "I was to whistle," said Jonathan, "if I noticed the slightest thing that might be dangerous. A special tune I was to whistle, one that Jonathan had taught me a long time ago when we lived on Earth. We used to whistle a lot together at that time, the evenings, after we had gone to bed, so I've always been able to whistle anyhow." Jonathan crawled down into his hole again to go on digging, and Matthias closed the shutter and pushed back the sideboard. Get this into your head, Rusky," he said. "Never, never let Jonathan be in there without the shutter being closed and the sideboard pushed across. Get it into your head that you're in the country where Tangle lives and rules." "I won't forget," I said. It was dim in the kitchen, a single candle burning on the table, but Matthias put that out. "The night must be dark in Wild Rose Valley," he said, "for there are so many eyes wanting to see what they shouldn't see." And then he took the trough and vanished, and I stood at the open door to keep watch. It was dark, just as Matthias wanted it to be. It was dark in the houses, and the sky over Wild Rose Valley was dark too. No stars twinkling and no moon. I could see nothing at all. But all those eyes of the night that Matthias had talked about, they couldn't see anything either, I thought, and that was a comfort. I felt miserable and lonely standing there waiting, and it was creepy too. Matthias was being so long. I grew uneasy, more and more uneasy every moment that went by. Why didn't he come? I stared out into the darkness, but it wasn't quite so dark now, was it? Suddenly, I thought that it had grown lighter. Or was it only my eyes getting used to it? And then I saw what it was. The moon was coming out through the clouds, which was the worst thing that could happen. And I prayed to the gods that Matthias could go back in time while there was still enough dark to hide him. But it was too late, for now the moon was shining brilliantly, and a river of moonlight was flooding the valley. I saw Matthias in that light far away. I saw him coming through the thickets with his trough. I looked wildly around, for I was supposed to be keeping watch, and then I saw something else too. Doddick, Fatty Doddick, climbing down the wall on his rope ladder, his back to me. It's very difficult to whistle when you're frightened, so it didn't sound too good, but I more or less managed to get that tune out, and as swiftly as a lizard, Matthias vanished behind the nearest wild rose thicket, and then Doddick was already upon me. "What are you whistling for?" he shouted. Because I learned to do it today," I stammered. "I couldn't whistle before, but just think, I can suddenly do it today. Do you want to hear me?" I started whistling again, but Doddick stopped me. "No, shut up now," he said. "Not that I know whether it's forbidden to whistle, but I expect it is. I don't think Tangle likes whistling, and anyhow, you should keep your door shut, you know." "Doesn't Tangle like you leaving your door open?" I said. "Mind your own business," said Doddick. "Do as you're told, but give me a ladle of water first. I'm dying of thirst up on that wall." I thought quickly. If he comes after me into the kitchen and finds Matthias isn't there, what will happen? Poor Matthias, the death sentence for... I'd heard enough about that. "I'll get some," I said quickly. "Stay here and I'll get you some water." I ran inside and in the dark fumbled my way to the water. I knew which corner it was in. I found a ladle and I filled it with water. And then I felt someone standing behind me. Yes, he was standing there in the darkness just behind my back, and I've rarely felt anything so creepy. Light the candle, said Doddick. I want to see what this kind of rat hole looks like. My hands shook. I was shaking all over, and I managed to light the candle all the same. Doddick took the ladle and drank. He drank and drank as if he were the bottomless pit. And then he flung the ladle down on the floor and looked round suspiciously with his horrible little eyes. And then he asked just what I had expected him to ask. That old Matthias who lives here, where is he? I didn't answer. I didn't know what to answer. Didn't you hear what I said Doddick. Where's Matthias? He's asleep, I said. I had to think up something. Where? There was a little room off the kitchen, and Matthias had its bed in there, I knew that, but I also knew he wasn't asleep there now. I pointed towards the door and I said, In there! I squeaked it out. It was almost inaudible. It sounded feeble, and Doddick laughed mockingly at me. Ha! You don't lie very well, he said. Wait while I look. He was so pleased, knowing that I had lied, and I expect he wanted to arrange Matthias's death sentence and perhaps be praised by Tangle. Give me the candle, he said, and I gave it to him. I wanted to rush away, just bolt out of the door and get hold of Matthias and tell him to flee before it was too late. But I couldn't move from the spot. I just stood there, feeling sick with fear. Doddick saw this, and he enjoyed the sight. He was in no hurry. Oh no, he grinned meanly, and he dallied just to frighten me more than ever. But when he had stopped grinning, he said, Come on then, lad. Just show me where old Matthias is lying asleep then. He kicked open the door and pushed me so hard that I tripped over the high step on the floor, and then he jerked me up again and stood in front of me with the candle in his hand. You liar, you show me. Now, he said, raising the candle to light up the whole room. I didn't dare move or look up. I would have liked to dissolve into nothing. I was so desperate. But then, in the middle of my misery, I heard Matthias's angry voice. What's going on? Can't a man even sleep in peace at night? I looked up and saw Matthias. Yes, he was sitting there in his bed in the dimmest corner of the room, peering at the light. He was wearing only a shirt, and his hair was untidy, as if he had been asleep for a long time. Over by the window was the trough, leaning against the wall. That grandfather of mine must indeed have been as quick as a lizard. I felt almost sorry for Doddick. I one looked so utterly stupid as he did, as he just stood there glaring at Matthias. I only came for a little bit of water, he said suddenly. Water! Oh, yes, that's a good one, said Matthias. Don't you know that Tangle has forbidden you to take water from us? He thinks we'll poison you, and if you come and wake me up again, I will. I don't know how he dared to talk to Doddick like that, but perhaps that's the right way to speak to a Tangleman, for Doddick just grunted and disappeared out to his wall. It was a very long chapter, but my breath almost stopped in my throat. I hope that you all enjoyed this chapter. We're going to be reading chapter 10 tomorrow. Kakitiano.